live, online. It's the Carter Center Weekend 2020 virtual event. Welcome.
At the Carter Center, we believe the world's most disadvantaged people can and want to improve their own lives. All they need are the education and tools to get them started on their journey to lasting change. The past 3 decades, the scope of their achievements and progress has been astounding. Your generosity has made all of this possible. You are helping millions of people prevent disease, strengthen democracy, and advance human rights. Because of your support, we've been able to train and equip thousands of community healthcare volunteers. Reaching the most remote and sometimes insecure locations, these volunteers teach preventive hygiene, deliver medications, and perform simple surgeries that can prevent pain and blindness. Through this outreach, you've helped bring a terrible disease like Guinea Worm to the brink of eradication, and people suffering from mental illnesses are receiving better care in the U.S. and abroad. Along with better health, you're also helping build peace in our world. Millions of people worldwide now know what it means to decide their own future. With your help, they've learned the principles of fair elections and how to monitor them effectively. You're helping them create democracies that can endure as they learn how to request information from their governments, right wrongs through their legal systems, and advocate for laws that recognize human rights. These same actions help mitigate conflict and terrorism in uncertain times when the world needs it most. Indeed, everything you make possible strengthens the foundations of lasting peace. On behalf of the Carter Center and the millions of people that you're empowering, thank you for being our partner.
Hello, this is Walter Mondale. I've enjoyed being with you for several of these weekends, and I'm really sorry we can't be together for this year. I do look forward to being with you again once this pandemic is over. I did want to take this opportunity to wish all of you well and to remind you to make sure to vote in November. All the best to you from beautiful Minnesota. And now I'd like to introduce my great friends, Jimmy and Rosalynn Carter from the great state of Georgia. Mr. President, Rosalynn.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Carter Center Weekend virtual event. Rose and I are here at home in Plains, and we're happy to be able to connect with you wherever you are. Enjoy the show.
We appreciate your support. Thank you. We miss being with you in person. And now we would like to turn the evening over to our grandson, Jason, chairman of the Carter Center's Board of Trustees.
Thanks so much, Mom and Papa. Welcome to all of you out there. I am live in my living room here in Atlanta, and I appreciate this opportunity to get together. I know, as my grandmother said, that we're disappointed that we can't all be together in person. And for those of you who have grown to love the Center Weekend, I used to call it, and as we now call it, the Carter Center Weekend, as much as I have, it's become really a reunion for us. And again, we're sad we can't be together. But we do know that this year, one of the silver linings of this 2020 moment is that we'll have a lot of new people. Hopefully, many of you have invited friends. I know I've invited some friends who've never been to a weekend before. And so we're looking forward to welcoming all of the new people and talking a little bit about our programs. We also recognize that this is a moment for our country in which there is a lot of pain right now, including because of the shooting of Jacob Blake, because of the divisions that we all feel. But I hope that this event tonight will be an uplifting one, because really the principles of the Carter Center and indeed our track record demonstrates the power of democracy, the power of respecting human rights, and the power of individual people to make enormous differences in their own communities and in the world. You'll hear about our programs for peace that are based on democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and conflict resolution. You'll hear about our health programs that tackle mental health issues and that also tackle diseases, eliminating some of them from whole parts of the world and eradicating Guinea worm disease from the face of the planet entirely. But the way that the Carter Center does that work, the way that the Carter Center works with people at the end of the road in some of the most marginalized places in the world is what makes us who we are. And really, we don't approach those places and those people with pity, but with a great respect for the power that they have to change their own lives and to change their communities. So I think this will be a great show. And with that, we'll turn it over to our first special guest who knows a lot about what it takes to make a great show.
Hello, President Carter. It's Lynn Miranda. Thank you for everything you do, and thank you for the incredible work from everyone at the Carter Center. What you do is so important at home and abroad, and we're all in your debt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lin-Manuel Miranda. I mean, that's pretty cool. I'm not saying we're going to compete with Hamilton, but at least you can tell folks you saw a show tonight with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and we should have a great time. Here's the plan. The weekend is normally an informal event where we have seminars and multiple days to go into the details of Carter Center programs, and it concludes with an incredible auction that always leads to remarkable memories for everyone. We're going to try to do that whole weekend in about 80 minutes. And so what you'll do is you'll hear from us about updates on our flagship programs. You're going to hear from our experts in the fields of democracy. You're going to hear an update on the Guinea Worm eradication program. And then our new CEO, Paige Alexander, and I will have a town hall where we'll take questions about the future of the Carter Center and how things are going and other interesting things that you all want to know. So we're excited about that. In addition, follow us if you're on social media. Please use the hashtag Carter Center Weekend. Please say hi to us on our Facebook Live page. And don't forget about the auction, which we may hear more and more about tonight. But cartercenter.org/auction. There are incredible items there, from bits of history to at least one person will get to take home an original painting by my grandfather, which of course is priceless. And that also is one of our most important fundraisers of the year. My first task before we get to the town hall later on is to introduce our new CEO, Paige Alexander. For those of you who've been coming to the weekends for some time, you'll remember Marianne Peters, who was a remarkable CEO, and Paige is taking over for her in a very different moment. Marianne led the center for 5 years through an incredibly important transition, where we really moved from an organization where my grandparents had control and operational work every single day at the center, and was intimately involved, to a time when they have been able to retire and be safe and enjoy their retirement down in Plains, where they're watching tonight, because they know that the legacy that they've created and the relationships that they've built and the organization that they've created is one that is incredibly strong, that is able to charge into the future with both financial security and an incredible track record that we have to build on. So Paige Alexander's joined the Carter Center June 1st, after we had a broad-based global search to find exactly the right person, and we believe we got that. We had 450 people with all different types of resumes and experiences come, and it was heartening for us as we embarked on that CEO search to see just how many people had the same faith in the future of the center that we did, and the same excitement about what the center is capable of. Paige herself has run different organizations over time, both in the public and private sector. For 30 years, she's been involved in international development. She was twice confirmed by the Senate to the highest levels of the United States Agency for International Development, running programs that are intimately associated with the Carter Center's work, including running their AID's programs in the Middle East during the Arab Spring. When we found Paige, she was in Amsterdam working at an NGO and running an NGO that was European-based, but that worked in Africa with farmers and others in exactly the same places that the Carter Center is working at now. And despite the fact that she was in Amsterdam when we found her, she in fact is from Atlanta. So this is a homecoming from, she's from Atlanta, excuse me. So this is a homecoming from Paige. I think that you will agree that Paige has exactly the experience, the energy, and the excitement about our programs and our principles to lead us into the future. So without further ado, the Honorable Paige Alexander, the new CEO of the Carter Center.
Thanks, Jason. In fact, it is thrilling to be back in Atlanta, or as my parents like to say, coming home after visiting 30 other places for the last 30 years. So it is great to be here. But I first met President Carter back in 1979, was at the Rose Garden, and I actually got to shake his hand, and I walked around Washington afterwards saying I was never going to wash it. So you can imagine how thrilling it's been for me to be down in Plains with you and spending time with your grandparents, sitting at the kitchen table eating pimento cheese sandwiches and talking about world events. But as you said, I've worked on campaigns, I've lived overseas, I've spent my career working in public service, but really this is the pinnacle for me to be back working with the Carter Center and the principles and the values that your grandparents have brought forward in this. So it's thrilling for me. So I was trying to think how I could top the fact I've only been here 2.5 months to have a conversation about the 39 different democracy programs and initiatives and peace programs we're running and the health challenges we have. But I realized there are 4 main reasons I came here, and so I'll share those with you tonight. First is the reputation. I've worked on democracy programs around the world, and I knew if the Carter Center was there observing them, that it meant that it was going to be a critical election, it wasn't going to be easy, and they were going to speak truth to power. And for me, that's said worlds about what the Carter Center has been able to do. And of course, on the diplomatic front, I've heard stories about the staff going into the bush to meet the notorious Joseph Kony in northern Uganda, to be with Charles Taylor in Liberia, really in the pursuit of peace. And of course, there's the father who took his son, 11-year-old son, 150 miles to find a mobile trachoma unit to have surgery so his son was able to actually see and didn't live in pain. So these are the stories and the reputation that brought me here. Second, I would say it's our ground game. I've been moved by the stories of, we have 3,000 staff people, and they really go the last kilometer. They go off the beaten path, off the foot trails, to make sure that they get to villages to deliver cloth straws, to make sure that people are working against eradicating Guinea Worm. They give the last tablet they can to the villagers, and they also go to the polling stations to make sure that everyone is heard from. These are stories at the end of the road that really mean a difference. And then, of course, the partners that we have. We really couldn't do anything. We couldn't accomplish any meaningful programs without the partners that we have. We have women and children and men who want better lives, who really want to spend time working with us. We can't force a child to take a tablet. We can't force a village to work on the water systems to make sure we can eradicate Guinea Worm. And we certainly can't force someone to spend half a day waiting at a polling station. So it's the fact that they are there and that they're willing to work with us. And as your grandfather has said, he's met these people. He knows that these families want a better life, that they love their kids, that they, just like he does, that they're smart and industrious just like he is, and that they want to build a better community just like he does, but they haven't had the opportunity. So to be part of this global opportunity giving organization is a thrill for me. And the fourth reason I'm here really are you, our donors, the people that we've worked with. I would not have this incredible leadership opportunity. The Carter Center wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have worked with millions of neglected people who would still be neglected if it weren't for our partners and how wonderfully supportive they've been, their compassion, their belief that the work that we're doing is important. And they've been there for 3 decades. So for all of you, I'm excited to be here. So these are the reasons. We will take, and it's because of you that we're able to take a chance, even if we might fail, if we know that the ultimate goal is going to lead to success. So for that reason, I'm thrilled to be here working with you, Jason, working with a great board, working with an amazing staff, and I'm looking forward to our program tonight. So I'm going to start by introducing our first 2 experts. Adam Weiss, who's joining us, he is our Guinea Worm Eradication Program Director, and he's been there in that position since 2018. Prior to that, he joined us 15 years ago, and he was working as a technical advisor in both Ghana and Ethiopia, really living among the people that he was serving. He was the senior associate director as well, conducting all of our programs overseas before he became the director. And fun fact, he actually ran for mayor of Ripon, Wisconsin when he was 21 years old. So we're fortunate that that did not work out for him, and we have him in our shop. And the second is Sara Yarian. Sara is our Guinea Worm Program Senior Associate Director, Adam's former job. And she has been doing the technical advising work and our country director since 2016 in South Sudan, when it was not an easy place for her to be. So before that, before she joined us, she was a wildlife researcher, and she also drove a safari in Kenya and Tanzania. So before they come on, I want to make sure that you actually see a video that talks about the work that they've been doing and what they spend their time trying to eradicate Guinea Worm.
Wait, tini bedanya, gina gina bodo ten pemanan, tuang nyor kabira jam nilang mo tu di kariya, nilang mo tu di kariya. Wait, tini bedanya, gina gina bodo ten pemanan, tuang nyor kabira jam nilang tu di kariya, nilang mo tu di kariya. Kapore natin, anamak taushe, de kapure, kabode. Ngabur mere cewok kiye apa mangan na chang to shei market nyanga ubang ujulu man tuya pokongwen habera blen youth ambassador ana youth ambassador ande tepur na jwa na gwa ga tawshe
The youth ambassadors, what they do, unique from what the adults do.
Gumwa twapeng na makchi waldi pona ba makchi ni berebe gumwa twapeng tepar na ga mudu pina ga makchi walna ga ku nyimi gre na ba ni makchi ni berebe tere.
We do tell them that let them not leave the dog without checking it. They have to check every dog. And we also tell them that they need to take the dogs to the dog park for the exercise. Because if the dog is just kept at home without taking it to the dog park, it will not be healthy anymore.
Bugun bere da mema kana golo reda auto blank ger paj blank pour blank.
The young guys are really performing that dramas for the community. Community are interested in it. They like it because that will even show them that the way you tether your dog and the way that you tether the cats. So this one, people are coming to learn for them to know. Then you will copy from that drama and put it in a practice.
Amanya ko chain na bajang mau kit gumo to na bajang tau shei mau kunya wa na bajang chei mau ko de pona be mada mak chei de ga amer ku gumo de na bapara war.
Incredible video about the work in Ethiopia, and thank you, Paige, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here today with Adam, who has spent more than 10 years battling Guinea Worm in remote villages of Ghana, Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Chad. Adam, I'm curious, how many worms do you think you've extracted over the years?
That's a funny question. When I was in Peace Corps, there were still thousands of people with Guinea Worm every year. So as I think about it, I probably pulled out a couple thousand myself from every imaginable place on the human body. I mean, you think about it, you name it, that the Guinea Worm can come out of there. And it's a 3-foot long worm. Actually, I happen to have one here. Kind of looks like spaghetti. But it comes from stagnant water that people drink, and it grows inside you for about a year. And it causes just excruciating, debilitating pain. And it can take weeks, even months, before you can fully extract it. And what happens is people are not able to go to their farms and provide food for their families. Kids are not able to go to school. And so we try to help minimize the pain as much as we can and gently wind the worm as we're pulling it out. But as you feel the pain and the cries of people with Guinea Worm, it's heart-wrenching. So you can imagine the relief that I felt when we pulled the last worm out in Ghana in 2010. And Sara, you know, I know this is very true for you. You spent more than 6 years in the field and in South Sudan. Would you mind sharing what your first experience was like when you met Guinea Worm?
Yes, I'll never forget being shipped off to this remote part of South Sudan, and my first activity is water patrol. And so The village volunteer took me out to the pond where the community collects their drinking water. And he said, I come here every evening and check whether people have their filters and whether they have guinea worm. Because the community had said, if somebody enters this water source with guinea worm, that person has to pay a cow to the rest of the community for endangering them. And that's a pretty big deal in pastoralist communities, as you know. I remember being struck by the level of ownership from the community. Guinea worm is about behavior change, and that's something that happens when people embrace the issue and trust that things can change. And you know, it's thanks to the thousands of volunteers and communities around the world that we've reduced cases by 99%, from 3.5 million in 1986 to just 54 in 2019. And with only 19 cases so far in 2020, we've already seen a 60% reduction, which is really exciting. But this is an eradication program, and that means making the parasite go extinct. And so 0 is the magic number, and we're not there yet. What's making the last mile feel so long?
My perspective is that everything in this world, when you get to that last mile, is the hardest part. Even in smallpox, which was the only human disease to have been eradicated, they experienced technical challenges in the last mile, as has the polio eradication program. And last year, there were nearly 2,000 dogs infected with guinea worm. So this is definitely a challenge that we had to confront. But this isn't new to us. The guinea worm program has faced many challenges over the years, from difficulties tracing nomadic populations to working in war zones, just as you did in South Sudan. And we've always come up with a solution.
Did we know in the 1980s when the campaign started that guinea worm could occur in animals other than humans?
This may come as a surprise to some of you, but we actually did know that it was possible. However, when transmission to humans was stopped, the dog infections disappeared. And we thought the same would be true in Chad and Ethiopia when we first started seeing dog infections in 2012. But for the past 5 years, we've put a renewed focus on the role of transmission to dogs. Because again, this was something we've never seen before. And so we really dug deep into the life cycle of guinea worm and the context in the environmental range of the two countries we're talking about, where in Chad, people eat fish for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if they're lucky to have 3 meals a day. So we had to really consider the possibility of non-waterborne transmission. So it's certainly still possible that dogs are picking up infections by drinking water, but they're more often picking up infections when they eat raw fish or discarded fish parts in the village because of this mass harvesting of fish. So, you know, this challenge has definitely set us back a few years, but I'm super excited to see a 25% reduction in dog infections this year. So on top of what you've already reported, the 60+% of reduction in human infections, you know, we're really starting to turn that corner. Sara, I think it'd be great if you could share with everyone what you think has contributed to this shift.
You know, we've always known that treating infected water sources, providing filters to endemic communities, and working with them to set up community-based active surveillance can stop transmission of guinea worm. But that all relies on being able to talk to people and to engage them. And we can't talk to dogs, and we can't tell them, if you have guinea worm, come see us. And so we had to think outside the box with transmission to animals. And I think one of our best interventions so far has been working with owners to keep the dogs inside either the household or the household compound instead of roaming freely. And of course, this is something a little bit different for these communities. And so the program is also providing food and support to veterinary care for those dogs. Obong, the boy that we saw in the video from Ethiopia, was demonstrating just that. And it's working. Adam, I know there's actually a story about how all of this got started, keeping dogs at the household. Could you tell us about that?
Well, it was actually like many days in sub-Saharan Africa. It was hot and sunny. Everyone is sweating and tired from a long day of work in the field. But we're actually walking through a village in Ethiopia with the chief. Every single year, his dogs were crippled by guinea worm. And this was an immediate problem for him because he had to go hunting for food, and the dogs were his tool to help him hunt. But also they protected his farm from wildlife. And even beyond that, he was a very engaged chief and leader of his community, And he too knew that guinea worm from dogs could spread back into humans. And so that was a huge risk for them. And so he actually came up with the idea and suggested that he just keep all of his dogs at home all the time. Certainly there were a few challenges because they needed food and water. And so the program provided assistance to do that. But after a few months, other communities started adopting the same practice. And in all, more than 20 communities began keeping several thousand dogs in their household while the program provided support. Now, you saw in the video the success of Obung and the team in Ethiopia to contain all the dog infections. And this actually inspired the Chad program to implement the same strategy. And it was just in March of this year that the Minister of Health went out to the field and launched the intervention. And now Chad has more than 4,000 dogs at the household level, which will help improve containment and also reduce infections into next year.
That's impressive. Recent years, we have implemented dozens of research projects to improve our understanding of the biology of the disease, build new interventions, develop diagnostics, and test drug therapies. But even now, there's still more that we are learning. So village volunteers and health workers implement what we know works or what we think might work, and a team of researchers continues to explore what other possible things could help the program. I actually think a really great example of that partnership is the ongoing work to improve water treatment.
Yeah, actually, I think it was just over a year ago that a woman who, funny enough, she actually did a project on guinea worm when she was in the 7th grade. But fast forward a few years later, she started developing research projects for various global health programs. And she offered to help us find a way to solve some of our challenges, and we agreed to look at water treatment as one of those challenges. So her team actually helped design and build a drone boat, which we plan to test in Chad very soon. That is, of course, if my 4-year-old son doesn't try to keep it. But anyway, if for those of you that have a Roomba vacuum cleaner at home, think about it in the same way as that, and that's how this drone boat operates. As it moves back and forth over the water source, it actually takes depth measurements. And so this helps ensure that the teams can be even more accurate and precise in their measurements, and therefore we can be even more effective in treating water sources. I don't know, Sarah, but it seems pretty cool to me, but I don't know what you think.
To be honest, I wasn't totally sold on the idea at first. I was imagining a flying drone floating over water sources. But every guinea worm warrior will tell you the time and energy it takes to treat just one water source in the hot sun. And so a boat like this could free up their time to do other things. There's also other research ongoing right now. What do you think is some of the most promising?
Well, you're right. We do have a lot of things in the pipeline, from scanning satellite imagery to identify water sources, even in forested areas, for example, to testing different therapeutic drugs in dogs. And so I'd say the most promising to me is a drug called flubendazole. And we're conducting studies right now in Chad, for which early results are showing that it will slow down transmission of guinea worm to dogs. And so it's very exciting. That said, it's not necessarily going to be a silver bullet, but nothing in this world comes down to a silver bullet. It takes a consortium of different interventions. And so we're continuing to throw everything at this worm.
Adam, I think we have some of the most committed people in the world who have dedicated their lives to eradicating this disease. And this team continues to remain agile and innovative. With all of these remaining challenges, do you think that we have what it takes to cross the finish line?
Absolutely. There's no question in my mind we can get this done. And I know all of you joining us today have had people tell you, no, you couldn't do something. And that just creates a drive inside of you to work even harder and smarter. And we've proven all of the naysayers wrong from day one. As you've seen, country by country eliminate guinea worm. There's nobody that can question the success that we've had. And there's nobody that can question that we can do this. Will it take persistence and commitment? Absolutely. Is it going to take passion and drive? Without a question. But Sarah, as I look at you today, you had grenades, you had, surface to ground missiles flying overhead. You did that because you were willing to risk your own life to prevent human suffering. That's the kind of suffering that guinea worm causes, but it takes people with heart, with spirit. And you cannot be, how can I describe this? You cannot be overwhelmed by people who think they know everything and, oh, scientifically this, that. No, we know the science. We know behavior change is possible. And we're seeing the impact of that. You reported 60+% reduction in human infections. Again, you can't take anything away from that. And a 25% reduction in dog infections on top of that. And as I was describing, the human suffering that's been prevented because of the success of this campaign, more than 80 million people have not had to deal with the torment of guinea worm disease. And kids like Obung, they're going to be able to live the rest of their life without guinea worm because of people like you, because of all of the guinea worm warriors. And of course, this has only been possible because of the long-term commitment, the partnership of everyone who has joined us here for the Carter Weekend, to the leadership of President and Mrs. Carter, and to all of those who perform daily acts of courage in war zones, dealing with wildlife, lions, crocodiles, you name it, willing to put their lives on the table to make sure the person standing next to them doesn't have to suffer guinea worm disease. So Sara and I are truly grateful to all of you for your support to the Guinea Worm program and to all of the Carter Center programs. And thank you for allowing us to share this news with you that we are turning the corner and we're going to get the job done. Thank you.
Hi, Jim and Rosalyn, and everybody at the Carter Center tonight. I hope y'all are having a big time. I know you're doing some good for all the people in the world, so keep it up. And Jim and Rosalyn, I love y'all. Let's sing one together one of these days. Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find. Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
Willie Nelson, but in a less lyrical way, I want to sing the praises of our next two experts. The first is David Carroll. David's our director for our democracy programs, and he's been with us since 1991, leading our work in election observation standards and best practices. David and his wife live on a land trust in Swanee, Tennessee, so as you can imagine, he really enjoys doing a lot of outdoor biking and outdoor exercise. So the second one is Avery Davis Roberts, and Avery's our associate director in the democracy programs. She came on board in 2003, and she's played a key role in helping us define our international election standards as well as developing our U.S.-focused election initiatives. So she has observed, David's observed 75 elections, and out of our 111, although 112 if you count Myanmar. And Avery has been in elections in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Europe, and the Americas. So I think that covers it. Avery has enjoyed, during quarantine, working on YouTube with her husband and two sons, including learning how to knit and cut hair, although she said quarantine type hair, and now she's learning to paint. So anyway, I'd like to welcome David and Avery.
Thank you, Paige, and good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure for Avery and I to be here with you tonight to talk about the work of the democracy program and elections around the world. The main goal of our program is to build inclusive democratic societies that respect universal human rights. We do this in a number of ways in different countries around the world, but we want to speak to you tonight about our work on elections. And I'd like to start by asking Avery if she wouldn't mind explaining a little bit about the connections we see between elections and democracy. They're not the same thing. Avery?
Thanks, David. So democracy is clearly broader and more all-encompassing than just elections, but we focus on elections in part because they are a critical element of democracy, but are also an internationally recognized human right. Since our first observation mission in 1989, the Carter Center has observed 112 elections in 39 different countries. That's a lot of elections, and David, I think you've been involved in many of them. Could you speak to the goal of election observation and why you think it's a helpful way to support democracy?
Sure, and elections, They're this critical moment when a society and its institutions really face that test. How are they performing? Can citizens participate equally? Are their rights respected as they go about trying to select the representatives and leaders? So that's the moment when we really focus as outside observers who try to be present to offer an objective view and detailed reporting about what transpired, in the hope that we will be looked at as providing an objective source of information about the quality of that process. We work globally and we try to focus our attention where we think we can have an impact and where we think important elections are happening. And by important, I mean where there's the prospect for real change, where there can be a significant advance in democracy, maybe a transition is starting, or where a country's facing stress and it's possibly backtracking and regressing. And we often work in the same country many times over a number of years. Guyana is a good example, a place that the Carter Center has been involved almost 30 years. The first election I observed at the Carter Center was in 1992, a key transition in Guyana. Since then, we've been involved in 5 different elections, and the last was this year in March, when Guyana held another difficult election. It's a very deeply divided society, and the presence of observers like the Carter Center and others made a critical difference in helping them get to a credible outcome in the end. Avery, let me ask you a question. We've done a lot of work together on elections and also on election standards and trying to build a database that can be used to assess elections. If someone were to ask you, how do you know a good election when you see it? How would you explain that?
Ooh, that's a good question and a hard question. I think several years ago, you and I had a conversation about the sort of core human rights that are central to a credible election. I think now, even more than before, I would say that the absolute essentials are that all eligible voters are able to participate equally, that they can do so free from discrimination, that all votes are counted, and that there are avenues for redress available in case there's a problem with the election. What's interesting, though, is that once you kind of get beyond these essentials, the challenges and issues that impact elections will differ from country to country and from election to election. And, in some places, as you know, David, the big thing will be whether or not there was really a secret ballot. While in other places, the challenge might be whether or not parties were able to really compete equally during the pre-election period. I think if there's one thing that you learn from observing multiple elections in different countries, it's that no election is perfect. And that even established democracies really have to remain vigilant and strive for continuous improvement in their election processes.
Of course, I agree completely. Your point about the issues that matter or that become important differ across countries. It's so true. And what's also true is, I think we both know, is if an election is very close, even small, what seem like small problems can have a big impact because of that narrow margin. It can affect the outcome.
That is certainly true. I think that's what is called the election observer's nightmare, David, that close election. I have a question for you. President Carter has in the past questioned whether we would observe elections in the United States, given the sort of decentralized nature of election administration across the almost 10,000 or so election jurisdictions in this country. What do you think? Do you think U.S. elections would meet the standards we use when we observe elsewhere?
Well, I think you know my answer to that question. Compared to international standards, the United States unfortunately falls short in a number of ways. We don't have an independent central election administration like most of the world has that can ensure uniform application of procedures and administration of elections. We do pretty poorly compared to most of the world in ensuring that there's a broad participation of the citizenry. It can be difficult to register. It can be difficult to have access to the polls. Many countries do better than us. And we're especially bad for minority and other disadvantaged groups on those counts. And President Carter has spoken publicly many times about the campaign finance system in the United States, saying it's really a system of legalized bribery. So we fall short on standards. But really, for the Carter Center, we haven't engaged in the United States largely because there was an institutional decision a long time ago that we would focus our efforts internationally. And so we've really tried to do that in our work. We've looked around the world and see where we can make a big difference. And we've prioritized, as I've said, countries that don't have a history of strong democratic elections and institutions, where there's polarization or lack of confidence. And that hasn't really been a problem in the United States, historically speaking. But as we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, especially the last several years, this has really become a major problem in the United States. And so we're thinking about this differently than we have in the past. And this year we plan to engage. Our precise plans are still being finalized, but we want to look at the elections in the United States and bring our international experience and our knowledge about standards and good practices to bear, and to speak about what we know to be good practices, especially regarding transparency in elections and how important it is that people have access to the process and really understand what's happening, especially this year with the role of absentee ballots in early voting, and maybe election technology and audits. There's a lot that people need to understand. We may also do some targeted observation activities on a few issues and in a few states. But let me ask you, you've been involved in an organization called the National Task Force for Election Crises that's looking at the United States. And this is going to be a difficult year. What are your concerns in particular about the US elections?
Well, I think that top of most people's list would be sort of COVID-related challenges. For me, there are three things that immediately come to mind. One is the issue of poll worker recruitment. In our home state of Georgia, the average age of a poll worker is 70 years old. So there's clearly sort of an overlap in the demographics of those who have long been our frontline election administration workers and those who may be most vulnerable to COVID. I think earlier this year in the primaries, we saw some of the challenges that can result from a shortage of poll workers, longer lines, issues within the polling precincts, but it can also really impact access to the voting process overall. With a shortage of poll workers, we may see more polling precincts that are closed or consolidated into larger precincts. And these kinds of changes can really disproportionately impact specific communities. The second challenge I would mention is absentee ballots, as you just were talking about. Absentee ballots are a great way of casting your vote safely from home, but they're not going to be the best solution for everyone. It's really critical that other voting options that are safe and secure are available so that as many people can vote as possible. If you do decide to vote absentee, it's really critical that people understand issues like timelines around returning their ballot, especially with the challenges that we see facing the USPS this year. But as well as other requirements, it's important to know whether or not you need to have your ballot notarized, and to make sure that the name that you sign on your envelope is the same name that appears on the ballot roll. And it's also super, super important to know that if you change your mind, you can still vote on election day, but you need to know how to do that to facilitate that process. The third challenge I would raise is just one of trust. It's an issue that we see in many of the places where we work internationally. Trust in the electoral process is really at a low right now. A 2019 Gallup poll indicated that 59% of Americans do not have confidence in the honesty of elections. I will say the trust has been lower in the past, but this is a crisis, and it's a crisis that is exacerbated, I think, by the polarization that we see in all aspects of our political lives, and with sort of partisanship creeping in to how we perceive the technical exercise of administering elections. How can we foster greater trust? I think you talked about transparency. That's one of the ways that we see internationally that you can really build confidence in electoral processes. People understand how vote processing works, how audits work. It really can help to build that confidence. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, so I did want to offer 3 practical things that I hope our friends that are with us tonight will consider as we go into the November elections as ways that they could really support the integrity of our elections. The first thing I would say is, volunteer. Election protection and other nonpartisan efforts to promote greater transparency in elections will be underway across the country and can be a great way of getting involved in election work. The second thing I would suggest is just be aware of timelines and deadlines for key processes, and share good and credible information, maybe from your Secretary of State or your local election board, within your own networks of friends and family to really sort of help bust voting disinformation. And the third thing I would suggest is really consider signing up to be a poll worker if you feel that you can safely do so. Our elections need all the help they can get this year, and there's some really great ways that people can get involved.
Thanks, Avery. You and I can talk about this all day. This is what we do. I think our time's about up though, so let me just close with a few words of concern, but also hope. What we see globally in terms of the state of democracy around the world and at home is like nothing that I remember in my lifetime. This is a really difficult period, and it's more important now than ever for the Carter Center to really double down and work on these issues, again, internationally, but also at home, and we're committed. I think the Carter Center has shown that we go where the difficult problems are and where we're needed, and we're gonna do what we can. I'd like to thank everyone who's been with us tonight. With the support of the Carter Center's friends and partners around the world, we're always able to make a difference, and we'll do what we can. So thank you, everyone. We appreciate your support.
Hey, everybody. It's John Stewart. I just wanted to send my best wishes to President Carter and to Mrs. Carter and all the incredible people doing work at the Carter Center. It's too bad that the things you work on are not really salient in these times. I mean, you work for honest elections and eradicating diseases and good mental health. And I can't think of anything where those would be relevant in these times. But even so, keep working on them, because you never know when we might need honest elections and disease eradication. That's, it could get retro. It could be in again soon. Please keep working hard. We need you. Carter Center.
Thank you, John Stewart. We appreciate you. We miss you. And despite what you say, we still think that these honest elections and disease eradication can still do some good for some people out there. But this is the town hall section of our winter weekend. I keep calling it the winter weekend. You can tell how long I've been doing it. Of the Carter Center weekend, which we normally would have with a big group and have everyone here. And one of the things that we like to do, or that I've done in the past at these town halls, is give an update on my family. And last year, I think I held up my cousin Jonathan, who just turned 2, but last year was 1. And this year I can't hold up any of the people in my house because they've all gotten so big, but let me at least introduce you to them. This is Thomas, Henry, and Thomas, and this is Kate. Thomas is in 6th grade, just started virtually. Henry's in 8th grade. Kate teaches 11th grade at our local high school. So they've been scurrying around a little bit tonight. And you've also seen, perhaps on the couch in the back, our dog Johnny. So that's our update. If Henry was standing up, you'd see that he's as tall as I am now. But thank you guys very much. You can go back to watching upstairs. And so the other people that are watching are my grandparents down in Plains. And they're, as I mentioned earlier, they're enjoying their retirement. They really are. My grandfather swims every day. My grandmother is doing all of her normal things around Plains, knocking on doors and changing her community little bits at a time. And they are also engaging in the Carter Center in meaningful ways, of course, still, and will certainly give me a call and talk to me after this is over and say I use the word incredible too much, which is what they've always told me. But in any event, I do think that what we're doing in many ways is incredible. And one of the other aspects of this moment in the Carter Center's history as we confront public health work in the context of a global pandemic, as we confront democracy work and human rights work in the context of a reawakening in our country of concern over those issues, we do feel very relevant. And this year, the Carter Center is going to have its largest operating budget in history, $120 million approximately to carry out our programs. And so we are expanding, we are doing as much good as we can, and so much of that is due to the great support that we've received from people like you. So we appreciate that here, and what we would like to do for this little bit of time is have a question and answer with Paige Alexander and I about what the Carter Center's other programs are. As you can see from hearing from the folks from the democracy programs and the Guinea Worm eradication programs, we have an incredible staff, and they are doing amazing work around the world. And so we'll highlight a few of those other programs and answer some questions, but I as the chairman of the board, get the first question. And so I'm going to ask Paige about when she started at the Carter Center. And as many of you can imagine, starting on June 1st, given all the things that we have going on, has been an interesting experience. So Paige, why don't you just give us a report on your first day or two at the Carter Center and what you've seen and what you make of it after these 2 months.
Sure. Thanks, Jason. Well, as you know, I arrived on June 1st, so I get off the plane from Europe and CDC fully clad in PPE asking me if I had been to China or Iran recently. And then I'm driving down Peachtree Street and I'm seeing the leftover protest issues that hit Atlanta at the time. And I get to my parents' house and there's a split screen of Washington, D.C. and peaceful protesters in Washington falling prey to things that we actually find a bit worrisome. So it was quite an interesting way to arrive. But at the same time, I have to say these challenges really provide us some opportunities. Like David and Avery talked about, the reality is we're at a pivotal time. And I was really excited to be down in Plains and talking to your grandparents, and they said we need to be bold. So I'm looking forward to being able to be bold. I'm really looking forward to actually meeting the staff in person. As I was looking at the screen, it was amazing to me that I really feel I know people so well now because we've had so many meetings, but I really don't know a 3D version of anyone that we work with. So that to me has been an interesting way to start.
Well, I appreciate that. I know that my grandparents have appreciated the times we've spent with them at an appropriate distance, but still eating pimento cheese sandwiches at the breakfast table down in Plains and talking about the future of the Carter Center. Let's take our first question from our weekend attendees.
Hello, Wayne and Ruben here from San Francisco. Hi. We would like to know what the Carter Center is doing to help fight the COVID-19 pandemic. And how are Carter Center programs and personnel affected overseas?
Thanks, guys, for the question. Paige, I know you've talked a little bit about COVID, but why don't you talk about its impact on the staff here and abroad and what it is that we may be doing to help sort of pivot our programs to address COVID?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, no, it's a good question because this is a new day that we're living in. And really, the commitment of our staff to our mission has been overwhelming to me. Like most NGOs, we've got 20 field offices and we've had to move to commuting, telecommuting. We've had to modify our programs for COVID-specific activities and distance and hygiene. And we've really had a real role in trying to keep 3,000 staff people and their families healthy. So we haven't really wanted to push too much. At the same time, so much of our work, Guinea Worm, for example, that's done at the local level. And that has continued unabated, which has been great. We've been able to integrate COVID messaging into our river blindness program and our trachoma program and our lymphatic filariasis program because people need to know, and we already have those last mile connections in the field. And we've had to wait for a green light from some sovereign governments before we continue mass drug administration. And this is very important for neglected tropical diseases because we don't want to let COVID interrupt those mass drug administrations. And we've also pivoted in some areas. We have increased attention on domestic violence, for example, in Liberia. And I was thrilled to learn this week that the Ministry of Justice, their hotline for domestic violence, because we've been doing radio and advertisements, making sure that women who are staying home during this period of time have an outlet. And so these are all areas that we're working on.
And it's not just the health programs, as you mentioned, the work in Liberia. The quarantine and the coronavirus impacts everybody. And we all sometimes forget, even from folks that come to the weekend all the time, that the Carter Center has 200 employees in Atlanta and then 2,800 employees, to your point, in these last mile locations in some of the these far-flung areas. And so we appreciate all you're doing to your point, keep them safe. Let's see if we have another question from another attendee.
Hi, my name is Dan Ostrander from Nevada. My question is that President Carter has often said that the Carter Center would not monitor any elections within the United States. And as I remember it, he gave two reasons. One is that the Carter Center doesn't get involved in domestic issues. And two, that the election standards and the inconsistency in the election standards throughout the United States basically disqualifies this country from the Carter Center's standards for monitoring elections. So there seems to be a strong interest in getting involved by the Carter Center in this November election cycle. So my question is, if so, what are the plans?
Thanks, Dan. You can tell you've been to a lot of weekends because you articulated very well some of the issues that have prevented the Carter Center from getting engaged in U.S. elections in the past. In addition to the issues that David mentioned, the fact that we have, in essence, such a decentralized election process that we have thousands of different elections. I mean, in Georgia alone, we have 159 counties that essentially run their own elections. So it's very hard to apply international standards that we would in a normal observation. But in addition to those issues, we've always been hesitant as a nonprofit organization founded by a Democratic American president to get engaged because our neutrality is so important and our nonpartisanship is so important in all of the other elections that we've observed. But we've believed now, and given the stakes of this current election and this moment in our history and the importance of the United States as a beacon of democracy across the globe, we decided that this is a moment where the Carter Center can and should get engaged while still respecting those principles. We believe we can come in and raise our voice about some of these issues in ways that will maintain that neutrality, that will maintain the principles of the center, but that will still allow us to provide that unique voice that kind of address some of the electoral issues that our country is facing in ways that other people can't. You may have seen just yesterday, on Friday, there was an op-ed that David Carroll and I wrote that appeared on CNN.com that described some of the ways that the Carter Center is going to tackle this problem. But it is going to be a matter of raising our voice and just shedding light, as we say, and this is Paige's line, and I'm going to steal it from her right now, but as she always says, we want to shed more light than heat on this electoral process. But now that I've said what you often say, Paige, is there anything that you want to add to how it is that we're going to confront this problem with any specifics?
No, I mean, I think I would just say, we're really looking at the before, the during, and the after. We want to be behind the glass, being able to look at, we don't want to be behind the glass. We want to be in front of the glass, making sure that we are seeing what's happening afterwards. So as you saw in Guyana, it took 5 months for an election to be declared. It's not going to be like that here, but it's not like any of us expect where it will happen right away. So we're looking at the whole linear election side. So I'm excited, and I really appreciate everyone's support and David and Avery's focus on this.
Right, and that was a big, important decision that we've made very recently, right at the outset of Paige's tenure. So let me pause the questions for a second because, Paige, I have some great breaking news, which is from Larry and Diana Brown family, and this is about mental health, but I'm just going to tell you what I've now been told. In honor of Mrs. Carter's lifelong devotion to mental health, the Larry and Diana Brown family is pleased to make a gift of $250,000 to the mental health program tonight, plus a matching challenge grant of $100,000 to support the Rosalynn Carter Mental Health Journalism Fellows Program. The message from the Larry and Diana Brown family says, under Program Director Eve Bird's leadership, we hope to build on the successes of the work and challenge all to support this work with a gift. Now, if matched, that could be $450,000 to the mental health program, and we'll have full details after the auction is over about how to participate in the match. But Paige, why don't you, 2 months in, tell us a little bit about what the mental health program is working on. As you know, it's one of my grandmother's signature issues and has been for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and it's really great because I've been able to see this is the 50th year that Mrs. Carter's been involved in this. And for us, it's really a marquee program, this fellowship program that you mentioned. There have been numerous high-profile op-eds placed and articles placed from our fellows. The resources that we've developed for a lot of journalists who are covering things during a very tumultuous time have been really important, and our special resources that we've put together for that have been a very important part of this. But the reality is we have a long-term perspective on mental health, and it's because Mrs. Carter is really focused on this. And right now, with the isolation and the changes in lifestyle that everyone is suffering during a quarantine and during COVID, mental health has really been destigmatized. We hope it will be fully mainstreamed so people can get the help that they need. So working on programs like this, I'm very appreciative to the Browns, and I look forward to making sure that we put that to good use.
Well, thank you. And next year at the weekend, maybe you can sit at their table. I sat at their table last year. It resulted in this incredible gift. So we'll see how you do next year. Thank you so much to Larry and Diana Brown and others. Let's take another question from an attendee.
Paige, do you anticipate any major changes in the programming of the Carter Center?
Paige, that one's for you. I'll let you take it away.
Sure. Well, as we've discussed, needless to say, I did not see a domestic program focus coming my way when I took the job, but we are where we are, and I'm really excited about that. I think at the end of the day, we're going to continue to pursue our mission. Our work has been, just as President and Mrs. Carter focused on, it's been our North Star to stay engaged in eradicating diseases and to work in the peace and human rights area. And so nothing's going to change on that. But in this day and age, there are innovative technologies that we can use. As Adam talked about the drones, to be able to address Guinea Worm through water abatement and treatment is a wonderful opportunity, and other innovative areas in digital threats and work like that. So we can access to information, access to justice. We're going to run a Inform Women Transform Lives campaign. And I think there's a lot of excitement we can do, but it's always going to stay focused on our two main areas.
And specifically, you've established even this year an innovation hub at the center, and you've also just hired two new vice presidents. Why don't you talk about that a bit?
So we're building the executive team. We have fantastic staff. We've got Dr. Dean Cinco, who's going to be retiring, who's been head of our health work, and he is retiring, and we're bringing in Kashef Iyaz. So I'm really excited about that. He's coming from CDC. And on the peace side, where Craig Withers is going to go back to his double-hatted position for the Vice President of Peace. He's going to go back and work as he's been doing on our overseas support. And Barbara Smith will be coming in. She and I actually work together at USAID, and she's from the Asia Foundation and our own private consulting firm. And so we're thrilled to have both of them coming on board. And the Innovation Hub is going to be an exciting element for our staff to really show where the innovation is.
Well, this is a new and exciting time at the center. And again, we're glad you're here. Let's have another question.
Hi, this is Manju from Raleigh, North Carolina. Thank you, Jason and Paige, for hosting this virtual town hall. Really nice to meet you. Paige, I have a question about the river blindness program. Can you give us an update on that? I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. And for those of you who've been to the weekends before, you've heard a lot about river blindness and the other trachoma programs that the Carter Center has. And we'll see how Paige can practice her schistosomiasis pronunciation after 2 months on the job. But why don't you give us an update on river blindness?
Sure. Since we have other people who are joining us who might not understand what river blindness is, I should describe that it's actually an infected flea that bites a person and leaves a parasite, and the parasite causes unbearable itching, and if that gets to the eye, it can actually cause vision loss. And so it's very easy with 1 or 2 doses of Mectizan, a Merck product through our partner. It can kill the parasite and it can stop the transmission. So far, we've delivered 425 million doses throughout Africa and Latin America. And in Uganda, we've eliminated it in 8 focus areas, and 2 states in Nigeria that have 2 million people no longer have to worry about this. But our success is really measured when we don't have to do a mass drug administration. So that's what we're trying to get to. And we've had that in 4 countries throughout, in Colombia, Ecuador, Mexico, and Guatemala. We've been able to eliminate river blindness. So this is really our goal. And I would say on the trachoma side, for those who don't know this, it's a painful bacteria that is an eye infection. And it can be easily treated with the antibiotic that we use through Pfizer. And surgery can also be used to correct this. And as I said, we've got these mobile trachoma surgery units that people come from miles to get access to. We've given 800,000 surgeries in the last 20 years in 6 countries. And we've given away 203 million doses of this antibiotic. So transmission is interrupted, and this is the most important part. In Mali, even with all the political problems, we're actually close to that. And in Ghana, we've eliminated trachoma as a public health problem altogether. So we're still really working, and this is our ultimate goal. And we don't want to let COVID stop it, and we're moving forward.
That's remarkable. Every time I hear those numbers, it's incredible to me. So We're actually going to run out of time here in a second, and I know that there were other questions, and I apologize for not getting to all of them, but let me just ask you this, Paige. And, as you know, sort of in its heart, the Carter Center is a human rights organization, and we define that term broadly to include the right to be free from preventable disease, the right to live in a democracy and to feel power over your own laws, et cetera. So these programs really all flow from that foundation. And I know that you know that. And what else, coming from that perspective, have you learned or have you seen over the last month that you just want to conclude this town hall with that type of discussion? So I'll let you finish this off before we move on to the next part of the program, and just say thank you for being here and hear what you got to say.
Great. Well, as I said, this is such an odd time in that I've not really met face-to-face most of the staff, but their commitment and the passion I feel through these video calls that we have, and to me it still makes me very excited to be here. The challenges are great and the opportunities are really massive, and so with the support of everybody on staff, I've come from the democracy side of the house and the peace side of the house, so I've seen the work that has been done on the Syrian mapping project to make sure that in the long run the unexploded ordinances are known and the demining organizations can come in, because the Carter Center has mapped this out. I've seen in the Human Rights Program, the Human Rights Defenders Forum went online very quickly, and we've had some wonderful opportunities to really have deep conversations. So we're finding ways in this day and age to make sure that we still get this message out. And I really want to encourage everybody to be part of the Carter Center, because we are doing work, but we can't do it without everyone's help and everyone's attention. So I'm excited to be here, and I hope others are excited to follow us.
Thanks so much, Paige. We will conclude the town hall now, and generally the most exciting part of the weekend is the auction. As you know, that has moved online, but what we'll do now is we'll conclude this section. We'll come back with a little discussion of the auction, and then an opportunity to say thanks so much. So we'll hear a small message about the work of the center, and then look forward to seeing you all for the auction. Thanks so much.
Howdy, Carter Center fans. Matt Robbins in Gunnison, Colorado. We missed each other for the live auction this year, being canceled for 2020. But the Carter Center's come up with a great plan to raise money, and you can support them by supporting this. You might remember this cowboy hat last year. We sold it at the live auction in 2019, and Rob and Sue Engelke paid $200,000 for this hat. We're going to send it to them. They're going to sign it and donate it back, and you'll have an opportunity to bid on it to support the Carter Center this year. How about we make this $1 million cowboy hat? And I want to just end by saying what President Carter will often tell you at our live auction. Bid often and bid high. So Rob and Sue, take it away.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for the hat, Matt. And it fits, too. Well, Matt, we want to thank you for donating your hat to the Carter Center auction last year, and we'd like to continue that tradition by donating this hat back to the Carter auction this year, and hopefully some nice bidder will have an opportunity to make a big donation to the Carter Center, and at the same time win this really fabulous cowboy hat.
Rob and I have been coming to the Carter Center functions for over 30 years with our children, grandchildren, and several friends, and it's been really a remarkable, wonderful experience. We've had the opportunity to meet some wonderful people who are intelligent and selfless. President Carter, Mrs. Carter, and the Carter Center, we know your legacy will last for many, many years.
Absolutely. So with that, Jason, here she comes.
Thanks so much, Robin Sue. Here it is, signed by the Engelkeys. It's a remarkable cowboy hat, and I hope that you all will be willing to bid on it tonight. In addition, the auction, for those of y'all who've never been, it's truly remarkable. Matt Robbins is a cattle auctioneer in Colorado. He looks much better in the cowboy hat than I do. He warms up his pipes every night with the Betty bought some butter, but the butter Betty bought was bitter, and rubber buggy bumpers and all this stuff. I can't do it like he does. And but hopefully, the fact that we can't be with Matt does not mean that we won't have an incredibly successful auction, because we need it for the center. And when we all get together, and some people are dressed to the nines and some are in flip-flops, we have this remarkable community event. My grandfather always gets up and says, bid high, as Matt said, and bid often. And at some point, he gets up and says, I feel like maybe we're not bidding high enough. And then my grandmother will come in and talk about the particular painting or the particular work that she thinks is so important. And so I hope that you will let this virtual auction that's at cartercenter.org/auction reflect the care and all that my grandparents would be putting into this event. So it's important for us. The type of work that the Carter Center does. My stagehand is laughing hard enough at me that makes me think I should take this off. But we appreciate all that you guys have done for us. And to conclude the auction segment, although the auction is going to go on until 11, we're going to pass this to somebody who knows a lot about bringing it home.
Good evening, President and Mrs. Carter, and good evening to all of our Carter Center weekend friends. We're delighted to join you for this very special occasion.
And remember that Bill and I both are watching, so please, whatever you do, hit a home run for the Carters.
The proceeds from the auction items go to support the work of President and Mrs. Carter all over the world. So please make those bids and bid as high as you possibly can.
And please, whatever you do, hit a grand slam. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hank Aaron and Billy Aaron, two great, incredible members of our Carter Center family. We appreciate you all. We appreciate all of the people who've joined us tonight. As I said, this is a moment in the Carter Center's history that is incredibly important, and it really is there to match this moment in the history of the world. We have a lot of work to do on all of the programs that we've started, and the persistence of the Carter Center, the principles of the Carter Center will continue on. We're excited to have new leadership. We're excited to see, in many ways, the torch being passed to Paige Alexander, to the new leaders like the ones you saw tonight, Avery Davis-Roberts, and the folks from the Guinea Worm program, and across the center. We're seeing a sort of a youth movement that's ready to take charge and to move towards not just the last mile of what we've done before, but to tackle new problems in innovative ways. So we appreciate you all. For those of you who've been to weekends before, we look forward to seeing you again next year as a reunion. And to those who've never come, we certainly invite you to come to the next one. So we're looking forward to being in person next time. And with that, we'll sign off. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you for being with us tonight and for all you do to help others. Your faith in our efforts is an inspiration to Rosalyn and me.
We look forward to next year's event. Wear a mask and wash your hands. And don't forget the butterflies.